art world. High culture, big prices, and even bigger words. What about artists with disabilities? What is the value of art for them? Carmony Neer is 56.
Hello.
She doesn't say much and has an intellectual disability. She's a full-time painter and her work has been exhibited alongside prominent Kiwi artists. Danny Miller. He's 49 and lives in San Francisco. He has severe epilepsy and an intellectual disability.
Right.
Two of his works are in the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Meet William. He's 45, has autism and lives with his mum in San Francisco. His paintings sell for thousands and his images have been used in fashion creations by designer Marc Jacobs. Andrew Blythe lives with paranoid schizophrenia. He's spent most of his life in psychiatric hospitals or on the street. His exhibitions are sellouts, and his works now caught the eye of international collectors. All of these artists work full-time at their craft. Surely it's about more than throwing a bit of paint around and keeping people's days filled. We want to find out what value art brings to the lives of people living with a disability. San Francisco boasts the world's largest space for artists with disabilities. Creative Growth was the first studio of its kind, opening its doors over 40 years ago. Back then, many judged art as merely therapy or a way to fill time. Here, the artists are recognised for their pure talent.
Well, you know, I think we probably all have some experience of being around people with disabilities in the greater world. We see them on the bus. We see them maybe walking down the street, and we have a concept in our own minds about who they are or where they fit into society or whether they do or not. You know, I don't know. I think we all have our preconceived notions, and that doesn't exist here at Creative Growth.
Sit up, take note. This is Dan Miller and his huge works in paint and pen.
The dirt.
He has an intellectual disability and wears a helmet to protect his head when he has seizures.
The light bulb on and off.
Dan likes words. His favourite's making it into his art.
Electrician, right? On and off, right?
He's been coming here to Creative Growth every day for the past 10 years.
For as long as he's been here, made the same kind of artwork, which is taking the words that are in his mind and in his language that he repeats and putting them down on the page. Again, he's telling a story, and over time that story has created a beautiful composition on a page.
Sandy.
Sandy.
Live here.
She lives here?
Right.
Dan, too, has been completely infiltrated into the insider art world. His work hangs at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He, too, has had exhibitions at White Columns and internationally that have sold out and given him a lot of people come to visit him. And I would say that he really has had a shift of being a kind of quiet, shy person to learning how to be social. So art has been this sort of touchstone for him in that way, where he's really come out of his shell.
Street switch. Right.
Right.
A street switch.
Right.
On and off.
Daniel Miller's works sells for between $2,000 and $2,500. And again, the money that goes into his pocket has just provided comfort for him and his living situation.
That's 4,000 New Zealand dollars. The art world recognises his genius. The disabilities are relevant.
In the beginning, the biography was very important. You know, this is a person with a disability. Wow, I can't believe they can do this. And over time, The viewer, the public has been able to really look at the art, really understand what the artists are doing, and look at the value of the piece that's been made. And not only that it's been made by a person with a disability, but the contribution that it's making to the larger contemporary art world.
What are you writing?
A treat. Treat. S-T.
These artists need support, and the world wouldn't be aware of their talents if it wasn't for creative growth.
Right? Like a switch on the chain.
The sad
Right.
truth is that people with disabilities have limited access to the arts. These artists don't have a qualification from an art school, so they're called outsider artists. In New York, Suzanne Brown organises her world into boxes.
I particularly like these ones.
The simplicity of her work is refreshing.
Who are these people?
My mother, over here, and my sister Claudia, me, my sister Connie, who's the youngest, and my sister Barbara.
What I enjoy about work by self-taught artists is the intuitive quality, the mark making. Often there's an obsessiveness, and I was thinking when I was walking around here, I wonder why that is a quality of work by self-taught artists. Often, perhaps, there's an ability to focus that other artists don't have. There's too many voices in the world, critical voices. Maybe art theory gets in the way. Art school, there's exams, there's timetable. Maybe there's an ability of self-taught artists to listen to their intuition more fully, without a filter.
With an exhibition comes visibility. The art and the artist are exposed to a lot more people. I'd been told about an artist whose huge impressionistic canvases had been snapped up by an international collector.
They're my name. Okay.
At 56, Carmony Nair's talents have finally been discovered.
I think the work is exuberant, and I think her infatuation with certain colours comes across. I love the fact that she's titled the show Yellow, Pink, Red, Orange. It's almost irrepressible, and it's consistent. The work is strong. She's having a good time painting too, you can tell. It's nice to capture the pleasure of paint.
Normally shy, showing her work to the world is giving Carmony more confidence. She's engaging with the community.
I think it's meant an awful lot to Carmony. She's empowered as an artist, seeing her work up on display in this community space. She's got a huge sense of pride around that, and that was kind of portrayed on the opening night with a number of people she was showing around and confidently talking about her work.
This is Carmony's show, Yellow, Pink, Red, Orange. Her massive impressionistic paintings are part of an exhibition with recognised Kiwi artists.
Pink.
Carmony's family had expected she'd probably never have a special interest in life. But 4 years ago, Carmony began painting at Sandz Studio, a creative space for people with disabilities. Carmony's artistic ability astounded her 85-year-old mum.
Well, just 2-3 years back, she started coming up with the artwork, and I thought it must be something just ordinary. When I went to see the painting, I was quite surprised. I couldn't even believe that my daughter has done that huge paintings, you know, with some of my friends. And it was really a big thing for us in the family. Oh, I was very, very proud to see the painting. I said, just a small gathering or something. When I see the people, the crowd all coming, then I rang my son. I said, son, come and see what's this here. The Carmonies is a big day for us, and you come along.
Brush, small brush.
It was really, really a big surprise for us. We didn't know she was keeping all those things in her all the time.
English isn't Carmony's first language. She has few words to describe her art.
Oh, the color white paint here, white paint. The color wild paint here, auto paint here color. The color mix of paint, green, red, pink, purple, orange, blue.
Still, she's not the first artist to prefer the work to speak for itself. And the work is selling.
Yellow, white.
Sunflowers?
Yeah, sunflowers, pink, yellow one.
I think it gives the community that challenging their perceptions and their values when it's seen on par alongside other mainstream artists. And yeah, that's strongly saying that message.
Yeah.
Art lets us explore who we are and how we see ourselves. And with success, the world sees us differently too. William Scott has autism.
That's me. That's my name.
But that's not how he defines himself.
That's a popular guy. I'm a popular guy.
William Scott certainly falls into the category of, you know, someone who's an artist.
So making friends to a lot of people. Make friends a lot of people.
He traveled to New York for one of his shows about 3 years ago, and I was lucky enough to go along with him. And as we were walking along the street one day in New York, he turned and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, I'm an artist." And something changed, something happened. He was among peers, other people that understood his work and that were art makers and that were art collectors. And he'd been in the art scene there, and he felt that was a right place for him to be. And so there was an identity shift, you know, and although William had never told me how he identified himself before that, it's a big deal for an artist of any, you know, of any stature or any media that they work in to finally say out loud, okay, I'm an artist.
William paints what he loves. Heroes, the friendly folk he knows, and celebrities he admires.
See that? Cindy Harris, a peacemaker. Terriel's a peacemaker. And Janet Jackson is a peacemaker. This is the serious stuff. Ultra Woman, the real superhero, to hiring the peace, magic piece, to put it on the earth.
Yes, with that mask on.
Art's a great escape. William creates a world of moral citizens living in a clean and idyllic city.
Those guards, they take away the wrong people. They get put away, get recycled by those guards. Recycle those bad people where they're doing killings or gun violence. They get recycled by guards. Recycle, people recycling. These people will be taking evil's place. Inner limits will be taking science fiction's place, will be taking sci-fi's place. To cancel the evil sci-fis, take away the sci-fis.
The guards from William's paintings don't exist in his neighborhood. He lives in a part of town famed for high crime and street dealing. Every day he escapes, taking a 2-hour journey to creative growth. In his art, William perfects a dream. Plans for a new San Francisco, free of crime.
He is a man in his 40s who grew up in San Francisco in a neighborhood that was pretty tough. There was a lot going on with drugs and with gangs and with violence. And he came up with a manifesto, I'll call it, of how to reinvent his neighborhood.
I designed a new San Francisco, real good. Yeah, you want to see my drawings? Architects. In the future of the housing right here, the new housing will be right here. We'll be in the Candlestick Point right here. So make a real peaceful place.
Where will you live?
I will live right here. Right here. I will live right here.
He started reinventing it in drawings, mostly architectural drawings and sculpture of the housing facilities that he grew up in and of the people that inhabited his neighborhood. He redid them, beautiful and shining and supported and with values that he considered very important and positive people. And that's primarily what his artwork has been about.
This is Janet Jackson right here. That's my favorite fan right here. And this is Janet right here. Janet Jackson is right here. The people will like Pretty Woman of Janet Jackson. I love Janet Jackson. But this Janet Jackson, Inner Limits of Janet Jackson, up the Hiring the Peace World, and she stops the war. Janet Jackson stops the war, and she's an inner limit woman, and she's wholesome encounter to put people's lives back when they lost their lives.
What stands out the most in William's work is that you believe him. You know, you believe what he's telling you, and you want to support him in the truth and in the endeavor of what he's doing. Not only to create an environment that he feels comfortable in, but for all of San Francisco that might be suffering. Utopian ideas, they were very popular, and they still are, in contemporary art making. So there was a moment there for William, especially in New York galleries, where he really was right on, you know, par with what other artists were doing. Yeah, William's work sells upwards of $2,500, and the sales of his work have actually contributed to his family in a really important way. You know, he'd been taken care of by his mother. He's 45 years old and taken care of by his mother for his entire life. And in the last 2 or 3 years, based on his art sales, he's contributed to his independence and to his own life and to his mother's life. So it's a big deal.
Art is expressive, but does it have the ability to transcend language? Abbie Twiss is deaf. Through her art, she can express her ideas, thoughts, and emotions.
In terms of the value of art, art is everything to me. To start with, without art, the world would be a very dark and depressing place. Not to mention boring. It's almost unimaginable. That's why I like my art to be so colourful. That means a lot to me.
Unlike our other painters, Abbie's had formal training, so she's not an outsider artist. But being deaf, she doesn't always feel like an insider. When Abbie studied at Elam School of Fine Art, she was the only deaf student. She felt incredibly isolated.
Well, I did miss out on a lot, especially when people were getting together and having chats. They would feed each other and critique each other's work. Sometimes they would all gather around a sculpture, and if they went out for lunch or anything, they would all get together and chat. I was by myself a lot. I guess I was used to it. It meant that I could focus on my studies.
Do you think that being deaf, do you think that somehow sort of influences your art?
Deaf people communicate visually, and that does show in my artwork. I feel both deaf and hearing people can still make sense of my work. This is a painting I did in Melbourne. It's an Australian advertisement that I've added my own text to make people think about being deaf.
And can you tell me, do you see yourself as do you identify yourself as a deaf artist?
My art has a lot of different elements. Some of my art includes my deaf identity, some of it doesn't. There are many aspects to my work.
Putting on an exhibition is a huge task, even harder when there's a communication barrier. Abbie's curating Auckland's first exhibition of deaf artists. So why a separate exhibition just for deaf artists? Couldn't those artists just be in any exhibition?
There are lots of exhibitions that include work by hearing artists throughout the world. So why not have an exhibition for deaf artists? Being deaf is no barrier to becoming an artist. And deaf people are naturally a visual culture. That's why we're having the exhibition. And we want to present the art to a broader audience so hearing people, through this art, can see things from a deaf perspective. Hence the exhibition, and we're just going to go for it.
In the past, the art of psychiatric patients was seen as a portal to their minds, and exhibitions attracted a kind of morbid fascination. But instead of assuming that Andrew Blythe's work represents the thoughts of someone with paranoid schizophrenia, perhaps we should be asking, what role does creativity play in keeping people mentally well?
Like the therapeutic thing in art, it's sort of like, you know, when I'm painting away, I can ignore all other things, including things in my own self, and, you know, I could paint away at a thing that I want to do instead of worrying, which I do a lot, but yeah.
Andrew Blythe is a painter in residence at Curator, a studio space for artists with mental illness.
Like before I went to Toyota, like I felt I wasn't really alive even.
Andrew experiences delusions. He sometimes feels sceptical and afraid. When we first met him 2 years ago, he struggled to speak with us. He wasn't really comfortable around anyone.
Because I went through a couple of years where I didn't say anything at all to anybody. You know, I somehow thought that it was unnecessary to talk to people and stuff.
Now, Andrew has a clear sense of purpose. He's an artist.
If Toyota wasn't there, I don't know what I would be doing. Some patients go gardening, and I always felt that it was so useless.
Does creativity have a kind of therapeutic value for you?
Well, yes, it does. Yes, it's. I was never one to fall in love, you know, with people around the place because I've always been on a dole. But painting is like being in love, or it is being in love. It's like being in love. It's just wonderful, yeah.
Art is love. Could there be any higher value? Andrew started drawing on scraps of paper. He's had no formal training and feels that's given his work freedom.
The art of people in the hospital sort of just come out of the mind like that. We're untrained too, and, you know, yet there's been such a lot of fine work, you know, produced at Toyota. Great work, even. It all sort of goes unrecognised, you know, we ought to be, you know, having exhibitions with all of our paintings all over the walls, everywhere.
When I first saw Andrew's work, I assumed it was work by a graduate student, a painter. He has a gift for the process of applying paint, and I think it's highly considered abstract painting.
Yeah, they're completely abstract and they're non-figurative, you know, they're not pictures of anything else, you know, they're not still lifes.
I just love looking at his work because when I'm looking at his work, I'm looking at a record of his choices. And that's what I look at when I look at painting. It's not just pretty pictures. There's a little story there. You can look at details and see the choices that the artist made. They might be conscious or not conscious. I think in Andrew's work, there's a lot of consciousness, and he's a very, very serious painter.
His work's been shown in Paris and New York.
I delight in what he produces. The people I've shown his work to in New York had the same reaction, and they immediately compared his work to some of the painters from the 50s who worked in a similar way. So they locate the work in terms of art history.
Like, what's in my mind, like when I paint, it's, you know, I'm always trying to get the whole thing to be perfect. Yeah, concentration and sort of looking at each tiny letter and composing the picture properly, and some of the acts of daring, risk-taking, you know, and things like that, yeah. A lot of it's thought and composition and, you know, hard work and long hours. And if I could, you know, I'd be working until 12 o'clock, you know, at night. It's a sort of, like, it's a sort of like a love, really.
Who would have thought art had this much power? It crosses language barriers, allows us to convey our emotions. It changes perceptions and opens the mind. It's a way of earning money and respect. Well, I'm inspired. A big thank you to all the artists involved in today's program.